Hi there, and thanks for continuing to watch the video, part of the MegaDebate on free will versus determinism, hosted by Roundtable. We're looking at some of the science that backs up determinism, and at the end of the last video we're talking a little bit about the biology of willpower. Now, willpower is really important when making a decision, especially if you've got temptation involved. So if you're thinking about, oh, should I steal this bicycle or not, as I walk down the street, the temptation is there. If you've got enough willpower and you've got a good moral grounding, then obviously that's going to put you in good stead for not stealing the bicycle. However, if you've got poor willpower and you can't delay gratification, so you want things and you want them now, then obviously that's going to help determine you towards stealing the bicycle. So just to look at another very similar piece of science that sort of backs this determinist view up. There's some recent research that came out from a chap called Gao and a lot of others in 2009 from the University of Pennsylvania, and these researchers found that a driving force behind criminal behaviour in neurological networks of 3-year-olds existed. They have collected data from children in the 1970s, allowing them to find out which children were susceptible to fear and which weren't. The 137 children with criminal records some 20 years later were all found to have significantly less receptiveness to fear than those who had no criminal record. As the conclusions to the paper states, poor fear conditioning at age 3 predisposes to crime at age 23. Poor fear conditioning early in life implicates amygdala and ventral prefrontal cortex dysfunction and a lack of fear of socializing punishments in children who grow up to become criminals. These findings are consistent with a neurodevelopmental contribution to crime causation. Therefore, it seems that certain conditions innate amongst certain children make them more likely, more predisposed to become criminals later in their lives. This is scary but unsurprising to the determinist. There are obviously many other variables that can interfere with such indicators, but there is certainly more and more evidence emerging that shows that our characteristics and the way in which we react in the world around us and the way we develop is determined by our physical makeup, and the rest is obviously determined by our environment. As the years go by, the more the variables are mapped and analysed, the more complete knowledge we have about why we make decisions. So some really interesting research there. Okay, so a bit more science, neuroscience, unsurprisingly. This time from Masahiko Haruno of Tamagawa University in Tokyo, along with Christopher Frith at UCL in London. They found that generosity, also seen as a desire for fairness, appears to be automatic, activated by the area of the brain that controls intuition and emotion. The findings are in line with current neuropsychological understandings, that humans are on a scale of being pro-social at one end and individualist at the other. So pro-social being the people that are more inclined to share with others, which you can read as kinder. Now, new research has found that experimenting on 2 groups of people, a pre-sorted group of pro-social people and another pre-sorted group of individualists that were sorted by standardized behavioral tests, has produced results that show that the amygdala region of the brain increased significantly in pro-social people when dealing with unfair distributions of money. The amygdala did not show such activity in individualists. So the more that the pro-social, the kinder people, disliked the distribution of money, the more the activity fired in the amygdala. There are 2 crucial parts to these findings. Firstly, it was originally theorized that generous people used their prefrontal cortex to suppress selfish feelings. That means that it's an active role playing in suppression, so you're actively generous. People were thought to control their kindness in the active suppression of selfishness. So this experiment that shows no activity in the prefrontal cortex, so there's no suppression of selfishness, and there's no difference between the 2 groups in this area. Secondly, the region that was activated, the amygdala, is an area that responds automatically, without thought, or awareness. So the researchers consolidated their findings by creating extensions to the experiments whereby they gave the participants memory tasks to carry out whilst rating the splits. The parts of the brain usually responsible for deliberation over things were being used, and yet the prosocial participants still had the same brain activity, showing that they were not suppressing selfish desires but responding automatically. Whether the automatic response is inbuilt or as a result of learned behaviour is not important to the determinists, since at the point of making the moral decision of kindness, these automatic reactions are out of one's control, and that's the key. Regardless of how and why, whether it's been learnt or whether it's inbuilt into the brain, at the point of making that decision of fairness, of kindness, is determined by the amygdala. So another fascinating bit of science to back up determinism. Now, to back up that last piece of evidence, Caroline de Klerk, who's a neuroeconomist at the University of Antwerp in Belgium, claims that this evidence, the evidence that I've just given you, backs up her own as yet unpublished research that shows that prosocial people are driven by an automatic sense of morality. And here's her quote: "So far, all our behavioural and fMRI experiments confirm that prosocials are intrinsically motivated to cooperate." Haruno will next try to figure out how this difference in the activity of the amygdala arises. It's partly genetic, but also likely influenced by a person's environment. He says, particularly the social interactions during childhood. He says it's interesting to think there might be ways to promote this activity to realise a more pro-social society. It's a massive piece of evidence to support determinism as a worldview. Kindness, generosity, even morality is seemingly the outcome of genotype, so your genetic makeup, with a healthy dollop of determined environment, so all still being determined. Let's look very quickly, because I want to wrap this up within just the two videos, at mirror neurons. Now, mirror neurons are neurons in your brain that fire when you are seeing something and it makes you feel empathetic towards it. So that means that if I see a person that's in a car crash whilst driving past it, and I see their legs broken and mangled and bleeding, my mirror neurons will fire so that I'm imagining myself in that situation very, very quickly, and that will therefore make me feel for that person. I feel empathy for them, so I'm more likely to get out and help them. So again, kindness and morality in this situation is to at least some degree determined by your mirror neurons, and this has also been, although it is a bit controversial at the moment, but it's thought to be one of the reasons why some children or some adults can be autistic. I've actually taught autistic children, and I know that some, because it's a very large spectrum, but certainly some autistic children cannot empathise, and because they can't empathise, they'll then do something to someone else without being able to imagine how they would feel having that done to them, so they can actually have bad behaviour or seemingly emotionless behaviour towards someone else, because they literally, their neurons aren't firing, generating a form of empathy. So mirror neurons are really important, and lots of research has been done into them, and it is thought that autistic children do have a dysfunctional mirror neuronal area. So again, other parts of the brain that are an integral part in the process that allows us to make decisions, or seemingly make decisions. Our generosity, our empathy is seemingly biologically determined. Basically, to sum up very quickly, as I want to keep this to two videos, the range of our freely willed decisions is cut down by all the ones that are actually automatic decisions, and the ones that are left based on generosity and our cost-benefit analysis and decision-making biology leaves us with nothing left. Everything is determined, and so the logical and philosophical case for determinism is backed up by empirical evidence. Feel free to disagree.
She's just another illusion, and you're falling. Looks like dancing.